You know how sometimes life just snaps? Like 1 second you're standing there, and the next the floor just drops out from under you? That was me, 38 years old. Joyce Romero at the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris. It happened so fast, I'm still not sure I've caught my breath. We'd gone on this trip as a family, my parents, my sister Angela, and me. It was supposed to be a band-aid, you know? After my divorce, everything felt raw. I'd poured a chunk of my savings into this vacation, hoping that a week in Europe would fix the cracks. I was wrong. So wrong. The whole thing blew up at the check-in counter for our flight back to New York. It was stupid, really. My mom hit me up for another loan, said they needed cash for some investment back home. And for the first time in my life, I said no. I told her I was done. I had to start thinking about my own future, my own savings. You should have seen the switch flip. It was instant. My dad's face went all red, and he starts laying into me, calling me selfish. My mom, she's the master of the guilt trip, starts going on about how I've always been a source of worry, how I'm unstable since the divorce. And Angela? She just stood there, holding my phone. She'd borrowed it earlier for pictures and wouldn't even look at me. Then they did it. They grabbed their boarding passes, and I watched them walk toward the security gate. I went to follow, but the agent scanned my passport and just shook his head. My ticket was gone, canceled right then and there. They didn't even look back. They just disappeared into the crowd, leaving me standing there like a ghost. No phone, no boarding pass. No way to call anyone. My purse? My mom had it, said she'd handle all the documents. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and my little carry-on. I won't lie, for a minute I just froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. It was a setup. A total cold-blooded setup. They took everything and left me stranded in a foreign country. I ran to the help desk, but I was a mess, barely getting the words out. Before I knew it, airport security was on me, telling me I had to leave the restricted area. I was about to be kicked out into the airport proper with nothing. And that's when I saw him. This guy, probably in his early 40s, heading my way. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. Total GQ cover model. He had this intense look, like he'd been watching the whole thing go down. He gets close, real close, so only I can hear him, and he whispers, "Just go with it. Pretend you're my wife. My driver's about to pull up." Then, this cold little smile touches his lips, and he says, "Trust me. They're going to regret this." Now, I'm usually a pretty sensible person. I don't take candy from strangers, let alone agree to be their fake wife. But in that moment, with security closing in and my own family nowhere to be found, I was desperate. I was also honestly a little bit curious. There was something in his eyes, a kind of knowing. So I grabbed his hand and didn't let go. A black limo glided up to the curb, silent and sleek. We slid into the back seat, and as we pulled away from the terminal, I looked back at those lights blurring in the distance. A cold, hard knot was forming in my stomach. They thought they'd left me broken, crying on an airport floor. They had no idea. In the car, the silence stretched for a minute before he spoke. His voice was calm, with a slight American accent. "I'm Alexander Hayes," he said. "I run a real estate group in New York." He paused. "I saw you at the help desk. You weren't screaming or crying. You were trying to fix it. That's hard to find." I just nodded, still gripping my bag. "Joyce," I managed. He explained it all, real matter of fact. He needed a fake wife. His own wife had died 2 years ago in a crash. He had a gala coming up. A huge deal with some old-school investors who were nervous about a grieving widower running the show. His younger brother was using it against him, trying to push him out. A stable, happy marriage would buy him some time. He needed a partner, not an actress. Someone believable. $50,000, a new life in New York, a place to stay. He laid it all out like a business proposal. Help him look stable, and he'd get me back on my feet. My brain was screaming all the red flags, but my gut was quiet. This felt like the first time in my life I was making a choice for me. We shook on it as the limo pulled onto a private tarmac where his jet was waiting. I slept the whole way across the Atlantic. When we landed in New York at dawn, a car was waiting. We drove straight into the city and pulled up to this insane high-rise in Manhattan. The penthouse was unreal, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the whole skyline. A sweet woman named Elena, his housekeeper, showed me to a guest suite and told me to get some rest. I stood at the window, watching the city wake up. I was exhausted, but for the first time in hours, I felt a spark. I wasn't a victim. I was a partner in a deal. I had a plan. The first thing I did was call my cousin. Diane, she's the only family member who ever had my back. She picked up on the second ring, her voice full of worry. Joyce? Oh my God, where are you? Your parents have been blowing up my phone. My blood ran cold. What did they say? She hesitated. They said you had a breakdown in Paris, that the divorce finally got to you, that you were acting paranoid and just wandered off. They said they're trying to protect you from yourself. Joyce. They're talking to a lawyer. They want to file for something called a conservatorship. They want control of Grandma's condo. I felt the blood drain from my face. Grandma's condo. That 2-bedroom in Manhattan was the only thing my grandparents left me. They knew how hard I'd worked, how I'd always been the responsible one, and now my parents were trying to use my own divorce against me to steal it. Diane kept talking, her voice getting tighter. They're gathering stuff, Joyce, old emails where you vented about stress. They even mentioned those anxiety meds you took for a few months after the split. They're painting you like you can't manage your own life. I thanked her, hung up, and just stood there in that gorgeous penthouse, shaking. Not with fear anymore. With anger. This wasn't concern. This was calculated. They'd stranded me in Paris, hoping I'd fall apart. And when I didn't, they moved to Plan B, legally erase me. I found Alexander in his home office, still in his suit, reviewing papers. I didn't sugarcoat it. I showed him the screenshots Diane sent. He read through them, his jaw tightening. This is sophisticated, he said quietly. New York conservatorship isn't easy to get. But if they paint you as a risk to yourself or your property, a judge might grant temporary guardianship. They're smart. They're not saying you're missing. They're saying you're mentally unwell. That's harder to fight. I leaned against his desk. Then we fight harder. I need a lawyer, now. He didn't hesitate. Within an hour, Martin Coleman was in the penthouse. Sharp guy, early 50s, carried himself like he'd never lost a case. He reviewed everything Diane sent, plus the airport situation, the canceled ticket, the stolen phone. They're laying a paper trail, Martin said. Thin, but enough for a hearing. We hit back fast. Affidavits from colleagues proving your competence. Financial records showing you've managed your own money for years. Maybe even a voluntary psych eval just to shut it down. I agreed to all of it. Whatever it took. But here's the thing about working alongside someone like Alexander. You don't just sit around waiting. The gala was 2 weeks out and I threw myself into it. Not because I had to, but because keeping busy kept me from spiraling. And honestly, I'm good at this stuff. I sat in on planning meetings, spotted problems immediately. 2 keynote speakers scheduled too close together. I fixed it. Awkward seating arrangements that would have put rival developers next to each other. I rearranged the whole floor plan. A major sponsor got cold feet after hearing rumors about Alexander's instability. I drafted a response myself, acknowledging their concerns while laying out solid projections. They increased their pledge within hours. Alexander started watching me differently after that. Like he was seeing someone useful, not just a stranger he'd rescued. One night, reviewing budgets, he opened up. That failed investment his brother kept weaponizing? Alexander admitted he'd pushed it through too fast after his wife died. I needed to stay busy, he said, rubbing his temples. Didn't want to come home to an empty house. Nathan's right about one thing. Grief clouded my judgment. But he's wrong that I can't recover. I looked at him, then show recovery. Pull the next quarter projections. Highlight the fixes already in motion. He did, and he started including me in everything after that. The night before the gala, I did a final walkthrough alone. Every detail perfect, signage aligned, tech rehearsals flawless, contingency plans locked in. Back at the penthouse, I tried on the gown. Elena had helped pick. Elegant navy silk that fit like it was made for me. I caught my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked strong, in control. The gala itself was a whirlwind. Cameras flashing, crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing. We worked the room together seamlessly. His hand at my back, my smile genuine enough to pass. Everything felt perfect until Alexander's phone buzzed halfway through cocktails. A tabloid had just dropped an article. Anonymous source close to the company claiming recent deals proved poor judgment, questioning his stability. We both knew the source, Nathan feeding the narrative. The team's statement went out immediately, but whispers spread fast. One key investor, Harlan Reed from Texas, pulled back. His body language said it all, arms crossed, eyes avoiding commitment. That deal was supposed to close tonight. I excused myself from a group of donors and walked straight over, glass in hand. Mr. Reed? I said smoothly. Joyce Hayes, I've been handling some event coordination, but I'm also deep in the project details. He shook my hand cautiously. Heard a lot about the waterfront proposal. I know that article stirred questions, I said, keeping my tone light. Off the record? Those sources have agendas. But the numbers don't lie. I pulled up preloaded projections. On my phone, revised. Occupancy forecasts, post-adjustment risk mitigation, positive cash flow already showing this quarter. Harlan scrolled, eyebrows lifting. These corrections aren't public. No, I agreed. But they're real. Alexander doesn't hide from setbacks. He fixes them. That's why this partnership makes sense. He studied me for a long moment, then glanced toward Alexander across the room. Let's talk specifics after the auction. He signed before dessert. Added review milestones, tightened terms slightly. But it closed, a win. Afterward, in the car heading home, Alexander loosened his tie and stared out at the city lights. That article was timed perfectly. Nathan's building his case. Proof of external doubt affecting deals. I nodded. But the contract got signed. Thanks to you. He turned to me, and his expression shifted. Serious. I need something stronger, Joyce. To counter the narrative of isolation, poor judgment. He paused. Marry me on paper. 1-year contract. It creates undeniable proof of stability. Courts respect that. Boards respect that. The proposal landed heavy but practical. I didn't flinch. Terms? I asked evenly. Full financial compensation. $300,000. Continued role in projects. Legal protection for your assets, too. I considered it. Protection for both of us. Against our families. Against the world. Exit clause. Anytime, no questions. I control my public image. And I keep the Hayes name after if I choose. He agreed to all of it. Martin drafted papers the next day. Days later at City Hall, we signed the register. No ceremony. No flowers. Just witnesses and stamps. As Joyce Hayes on the certificate, I folded it carefully and slipped it into my bag. This wasn't a rescue anymore. This was armor. A few weeks later, we'd moved to Alexander's place in the Hamptons, beachfront, glass walls, quiet. The distance from the city felt like breathing room. I kept working, diving into his next project, a luxury resort development. Found gaps in the market research, pushed for wellness amenities, redesigned guest flow based on everything I'd learned running events. The architects actually listened. Martin called with updates. My parents' conservatorship petition had a hearing date. Thin evidence, but still a threat. Alexander's brother Nathan had filed his own paperwork too, claiming incapacity, using that same investment flop and the gala rumors as proof. Late nights became routine. Documents spread across the dining table. I helped organize Alexander's defense, financial audits, board minutes, recovery projections. He started leaning on my instincts. We'd argue about framing, then sharpen each other's points until they held. Somewhere in all that chaos, something shifted between us. Not romance exactly. Deeper than that. Trust you only earn when you've seen someone at their worst and they didn't run. Then one morning, the doorbell rang. Elena answered, then hurried back to the study where Alexander and I were reviewing blueprints. Your family, she said quietly. They're here. I set down the plans. Alexander stood immediately. I'll stay out of sight unless you need me. This is your conversation. I walked to the foyer alone. Martin waited in the hallway, briefcase ready. My father, Robert, stepped in first. My mother, Linda, right behind. Angela trailed, eyes on the floor. No hugs, no hellos. Just tension thick enough to choke. You've gone too far, Robert said, voice low. Marrying a stranger? Hiding here like you're above us. Linda jumped in. We came to bring you home. Your mental health is fragile. We're trying to help. I stood there, arms crossed. Help by filing for conservatorship? That's what this is about. Robert's jaw tightened. You disappeared in Paris, refused contact. We had to protect your assets. The condo grandma left you. Angela shifted, eyes flicking up then away. I gestured toward Martin. My lawyer has the full file. You submitted papers claiming incapacity based on erratic behavior. Emails I sent during a stressful divorce. That's not evidence. That's cherry picking. Martin stepped forward, opening his briefcase. The petition lacks substantial proof under New York law. No medical diagnosis. No recent incidents. Just old complaints twisted to fit a narrative. Linda's face flushed. You're being manipulated by that man. He's using you for his own legal problems. I met her gaze evenly. Alexander isn't the one trying to control my inheritance. You are. Robert stepped closer. We raised you. You deserve nothing, I cut in. You lost that right when you orchestrated that abandonment at the airport. Took my phone. My passport. Canceled my ticket. All to push this conservatorship quietly. Angela finally spoke, voice small. We didn't mean for it to go this far. I turned to her. You borrowed my phone for photos. Mom kept my passport for convenience. You all walked away without a word. That was deliberate. Her eyes welled up. Dad said it was the only way to make you see reason. I thought maybe you'd come back and everything would fix itself. I shook my head slowly. You let them use you again. Robert tried to interrupt. Enough, come home. We'll drop the filing if you sign over management of the condo to us. I pulled out the ultimatum I'd prepared with Martin. Here's my offer. Withdraw the conservatorship petition immediately. Issue a public statement acknowledging it was unfounded. In return, I won't pursue counterclaims for fraud, forgery, or emotional distress. Linda scoffed. You wouldn't dare sue your own family. I looked at each of them. Try me. Angela wiped her eyes, glancing between us. For a second, something flickered there. Regret, maybe. Understanding. She opened her mouth, then closed it, stepping back beside her parents. Robert shook his head. You're not the daughter we raised. I'm the daughter you never valued, I said quietly. They turned to leave. Angela hesitated at the door, looked back once, eyes red, expression raw with something that might have been guilt. Then she followed them out. The door closed. I exhaled, the silence heavy. Martin gathered his papers. I'll file the counter motion today. Alexander emerged from the hallway, arms crossed. You handled that perfectly. I nodded, resolve settling deep. No more waiting for them to do the right thing. The court decision came faster than expected. Martin's evidence crushed their case. Medical records confirming no ongoing incapacity. Financial statements proving independent management. Affidavits from colleagues attesting to my reliability. The judge dismissed the petition outright, noting it appeared motivated more by property concerns than genuine welfare. Alexander's case played out similarly. The board reviewed the stability during our arrangement, accepted it as evidence against Nathan's claims. Nathan's challenge collapsed. He was sidelined from company decisions within months. Word spread through old neighborhoods and mutual acquaintances. My parents lost standing in their retirement community. Whispers followed them at events they once hosted. Angela's professional network caught wind, subtle shifts in how colleagues viewed her judgment. The condo remained mine alone, untouched. One evening, an email arrived from Angela. Subject line, I'm sorry, she wrote about realizing too late. How her silence enabled everything. How guilt kept her up nights. How she wished she'd spoken up that day in the Hamptons. I read it twice, felt the pull of old bonds, then closed the message without replying. Some bridges once burned stay that way. The contract marriage ended exactly on schedule. 1 year. We filed dissolution papers amicably. No contest, no drama. I retained full control over my public image and assets, just as agreed. The Hayes name faded from legal documents, but the protection it provided lingered in resolved threats. We parted as partners turned friends. Mutual respect intact. Occasional check-ins about projects, but separate lives. I poured everything into launching my own event planning firm. Started small with referrals from gala contacts. Momentum built fast. Corporate launches, nonprofit fundraisers, high-profile weddings. Bookings filled the calendar within months. The condo became dual-purpose. Sleek office space downstairs for meetings, private living quarters above. Renovations reflected my taste. Open layouts, neutral tones, large windows flooding rooms with light. Success felt earned, not gifted. Alexander visited once for a consultation on a company retreat I organized. We walked the beach afterward, conversation easy. You built something solid, he said. So did you, I replied. No romance lingered. Just appreciation for shared survival. Years later, my firm's flagship event unfolded at a waterfront venue in the Hamptons. Hundreds of guests. Flawless execution. Rave reviews already pouring in. I stepped onto the terrace during a quiet moment. Ocean breeze carrying salt and evening chill. Waves rolled in steadily, horizon painted in fading gold. Family trust can fracture beyond repair, I realized standing there. But self-worth doesn't depend on bloodlines. Cutting ties wasn't loss. It was liberation. The freedom to define my value, chase ambitions without apology, surround myself with people who choose respect over obligation. That's the real inheritance. Knowing when to walk away. Building stronger on the other side. If betrayal taught me anything, it's this: broken faith from those closest hurts deepest. Yet healing comes from within. You don't need permission to protect your peace. Sometimes ending a chapter forcefully opens the best ones ahead. That day at Charles de Gaulle, they thought they'd left me with nothing. Instead, they gave me everything, the push. I needed to finally become someone I actually respect. And honestly, watching the sunset over the water, glass of champagne in hand, surrounded by people who value me for who I am now, not who I used to be, I wouldn't change a thing.